Welcome back to the Sales Genius Podcast. Today's guest is Mark Donnigan, a virtual CMO and go-to-market strategist who's led tech companies to more than $500 million in revenue and enterprise value. He's the creator of frameworks like Lean Content Engine, Elevate, and the Marketing Pod model that's designed to help businesses win today in the noisy, budget-constrained market we all play in. He's also the host of the Marketing Execution Podcast, so I would recommend following him as well, where he champions the idea that AI-first execution can outperform even the most experienced people you have working for you. Mark is here to show us how this marketing pod approach turns small teams into growth machines. So let's get things started.
This podcast is for the sales professionals at every level. If you want to convert more prospects into paying customers, then you're in the right place. Because Joe has spent the last 3 decades mastering buying behaviors, personality types, emotional and logical triggers. This is the Sales Genius Podcast. It's only a numbers game if you want educated. It's time to get educated. Let's go! Educated. Want to learn how to close deals. Want to learn how to sell more. That's what we're here for at Sales Genius. Let's go!
All right, y'all's head should be bobbing as we get through that. All right, I'm excited. I'm going to bring up Mark onto the stage. Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And you are the real version of you. It's not an AI thing.
That's right. That's right. No AI avatar here. It's great to be here, Joe.
Great. I am excited. So I am a huge fan of AI, and I love building, playing with things. I'm one of those nerds that throws everything into it, creates his own chat bot. So I don't have to actually research anything anymore.
We'll have to compare notes.
Yes, fantastic. So I'm really excited about how someone can go AI first, right? Especially in the world of sales, business, entrepreneurship, anybody out there going, you know what? I need, right, to make sure that I'm not irrelevant in 6 months to a year, right? Or even 5 years, because most of us are in business to stay in business.
That's right.
So perfect. Welcome. I did give a little bit of the feedback. Is there anything you say, you know what? I need to make sure there's one thing somebody walks away today from this podcast and they know this one thing. Is there one thing we need to focus on?
Yeah, there really is. It's that in today, business is moving so fast, execution trumps everything. And, what we're going to talk about, and, Joe, if you want to throw maybe my first slide up here. And
look at that. I'm going to switch with you. You go over there. There you go.
There you go.
All right. Perfect.
Cool. So, I'm just going to launch right in if that's okay.
Please.
All right.
Execute. Good. That's all I'm saying. Just execute.
Yeah, that's right.
Example.
Let's execute. You said, what's the one thing? Well, the one thing is, look, business is moving so fast today that, execution trumps almost everything. And because it's moving fast, for a lot of us with experience, i.e. A few years under our belts, traditionally that was something that would often give you an advantage. If you were interviewing with a new company, it's like, hey, I've got, 18 years in this industry or this particular market, in this geography, in the city, town, state, whatever. Nowadays, not that our experience doesn't matter, but business is moving so fast that we can't just rely on it. So what I'm going to talk about here in the next 25, 30 minutes is why AI powered speed beats experience. Let's be real. The old sales playbooks are obsolete. Now, that doesn't mean we throw them out, because obsolete doesn't mean that there aren't parts of them that are tried and true, that, that we should just forget everything we learned. There's certainly fundamentals, right? That we that we don't want to lose those. But the old sales playbooks where there was a 7-step process, a 9-step process,
As long as it's not 12 steps, because that's a recovery program.
Well, that's why I said 7 or 9, but 11 maybe, or 13,
Right. Yeah.
I'm exclusively today working in marketing, although I started my career in sales. And so in marketing, we call them funnels, right? And boy, they look great on a PowerPoint slide. Let me tell you, the buyer's in control. Gartner, this is some research, and Gartner, Forrester, I mean, there's just go to your favorite LLM and, and do a little bit of prompting about the buyer's journey in B2B. But the data is showing that for a lot of buying processes, by the time a buyer gets in front of a seller, a salesperson, they are sometimes 80% of the way through their buying process. This is radically different from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where, you could get in the 11th hour and snipe a deal, and that always got a special high five from your sales manager because, hey, we weren't even in this deal, and we stole it from our competitor. Unfortunately, you're not even going to know about it in most cases today, because the days of, just getting that blanket incoming call and, hey, we'd like to set up a meeting, love to have a salesperson come by, we're in the middle of a buying process, those days are largely over. So the buyer's in control. Then you factor in the buying committee has exploded. Yeah. And I really prefer the language, the buying committee, because the old days, and again, this is where playbooks are, I like the terminology obsolete, because it doesn't mean the playbook, it doesn't mean burn the playbook, but it means that it's obsolete. It needs updating. And the updating is it's no longer sufficient to go find who holds the budget. And then, camp outside their assistant's office and stalk them on social media and find out where their kid goes to school and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, those tactics occasionally still work today. Right. There's, always the exception that proves the rule. But by and large, the buying committee is now 10, 11 stakeholders. And for really complex tech purchases, which is the world that I'm in, it can be 20 or more. Yeah. And what's really important to understand is that no longer does the budget holder have the power to override the other stakeholders. So now you have a buying process where you might have a dozen or more individuals who, yes, it's true, there's still only one person around that table who actually, it's going to be their signature on the, it's not literally a signature anymore, but, digital signature on the PO. So they're the only ones that have authority, the SVP, the CIO, the CTO, the VP, the CEO, the CFO, whoever that is. But there's one person, but there's 11 or 12 or more other people who can all say no. And in my experience selling advanced technologies and, even not so advanced technologies, but in B2B where the stakes are high, almost never. In fact, I personally have not had a case where one of these individual stakeholders has said no, who's legitimately a part of the process, that is. So I'll put that qualifier out there.
Right.
Who says no, and then the budget holder says, oh, but yeah, I hear you. I'll take that. I'll take your feedback into account, Joe, but I think we're going to proceed. And almost in every case, they're going to say, well, why would I go against Joe? Joe's the one who's responsible for implementing this. And if Joe is saying that it's going to cause a 3-quarter delay, or we're going to risk this project, or something else that's important to the business could be at risk, then it doesn't matter if I'm the CFO of a public company. I'm not going to override Joe, or else why do I have Joe, in that example?
And I do believe that the reason the committee got so big, because one of the stats I had tracked, because me going business to business as well, it was like, as soon as a company gets to 50 employees, you now have to have at least 7 people make a decision, because no longer does the CEO go, we're doing it and this is how it is,
Yeah.
because everybody's worried about what if my decision was wrong and now everybody can blame me and I still have to pay them all.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
So this is
Yeah.
just great. And I just love the fact you're looking at it, because when you go to tech purchase, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It affects everybody across the board. And
It-
now they're
it-
all
it-
waiting for somebody to say no.
It's fascinating, and I know that maybe we'll have to schedule a follow up, and we'll talk about the buying journey and
Yep.
that sort of thing, because that's not actually. But this slide right here, we could spend the whole 30 minutes on, right?
That's
Because it gets to the heart of, do you go high, do you go low, do you how you approach, and there's never, at least in my experience, there's rarely, I should say, I hate using the word never,
Right.
but there's rarely a clear answer. A lot of it's context and industry dependent. But okay, but let's move on through this, because we are here to talk about execution and really how AI becomes the jetpack. It becomes the rocket fuel. So what else has changed in the playbook, and why does my 2025 nearly 30 years of experience suddenly become not quite the booster that it was 10 years ago? Well, the new guard is digital native. And what's interesting about this is, the vast majority, in fact, I believe it is, more than like 80% of B2B buyers of that B2B buyer cohort are millennials and Gen Z. And so what's unique about millennials and Gen Z, not just that they're younger, but they are digital first, they're digital native. And so they don't separate their business life from their personal life. Those of us that manage and work with and, millennials and Gen Z, understand this, right? And so it means then that when they are in a buying process and when they're working with us as sellers, or they are working with, their marketers who are marketing to them, they're expecting B2C, type experiences, seamless, digital first. Gartner's done some really, really interesting research and has some great reports out. Again, you can find it very easily. Just do a little Googling, or, go to your favorite LLM. And then speed is the new currency. So the point here is that why is execution so important is that, the old playbook, which the old playbook was, you would often meet someone at a trade show, at an event. You'd have a sit down meeting. You would then go visit them in their office. You would present the company. You'd schedule a follow up. You'd present the product. You'd schedule a follow up. You'd do a demo. You'd be 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings in before you were even really beginning to understand too much about, the scope of the deal.
And at
Now,
least 6 weeks in.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you think about how many steps there were, right? And by the way, in some cases, I can remember in the internet 1.0 era, to be the Cisco sales rep, like rather than you having to go, court and solicit the customers, they were courting you. Please, please, Mark, come meet with me. Please, please. We need routers. Please, please. What do we need to do? What can we do to buy your product? Those days are gone.
Yep.
So this is why the old playbook is obsolete. Okay. Now, the challenge here then is it for those that are saying, but wait a second, like my value add, thing that gives me an advantage over other sellers or other marketers is that I've been in the industry. I've worked this patch for 25 years. I have this experience. And it is true, those still are strengths, but they can be a bottleneck. And I prefer thinking of it like a bottleneck than something, worse, because it can be a bottleneck. And the bottleneck is that our experience is our rear view mirror. It's calibrated by definition for a market that we've just agreed is moving so quickly that market, maybe it still exists, maybe it doesn't. maybe it no longer exists. And then it creates cognitive biases that can kill deals. So confirmation, I've seen this happen in 6 deals, and therefore this is going to happen again.
Yes.
Cognitive
100%.
bias.
Yep.
And I know, Joe, we've never suffered from that.
No,
but I hear some people do.
Yes. The little people.
Yeah.
Yes.
But really, confirmation bias. And then there can be like anchoring bias, in our industry works different. How many times?
Yeah. Everybody believes that.
Everybody believes,
Yeah.
but in our industry, and yes, there always are nuances, and yes, industries function different, but it's like, I've been real fortunate to do business around the world. And one of the things that I picked up pretty early on is that absolutely there's cultural differences, the way that you exchange business cards in Japan and other parts of Asia, it's very different than what we do in the West. And, and that's just one very small example. So obviously there's cultural differences that we need to conform to if we want to be successful in those markets. But, at the end of the day, we're all human. And even if we speak different languages, have different cultural kind of ways of working, different priorities in our personal life, professional life, we still respond visually. We're still verbal beings. We still, relationships still matter. And in fact, in a lot of cultures, the relationship matters even more than it does, here in the West, in America. But anchoring bias is something that can really hold us back because, it's like, hey, this is what I know. And it can be like, well, that was valid up until 5 years ago, or up until this thing called ChatGPT came out. But all of a sudden, SEO has shifted, right. If you're a marketer, So we have to be careful. Our greatest strengths can be a bottleneck. And then the question is, well, what do you do with this? So, hey, I can't undo my 25 years of experience. I cherish my Zig Ziglar books that are on my bookcase here. And I find myself more and more encouraging, folks that are a little bit earlier in their career and are, either coming to me directly or indirectly looking for advice or input. And I say, hey, you ever heard of this guy, Zig Ziglar? They're like,
what? What's
yeah,
his name?
who?
Yeah.
You ever heard of this book, Crossing the Chasm? And now in marketing, some of the, most people have, but, so it's not to say we're not talking about, throw everything out, but how can we as experienced professionals then adapt and not get anchored, not have our experience be a bottleneck? And the answer is adopt a beginner's mind. I mean, one answer, I'm sure there's others, but it's go back to, I love this quote, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few. Now, if you read that really quickly, you actually might think, well, that's a good thing, right? I mean, that's because the expert's so experienced. They know, oh, surely that's a bad idea. Oh, you would never want to do that. Oh, I've done that before. It didn't work. But no, in today's dynamic business world and the way the market is moving, a beginner's mind, you want many possibilities, and beginners have to ask questions because they don't know anything, right? So by definition, you're the student, you're asking questions. So you're leading with questions to understand what's the real need of the buyer. What's the market really looking for? What are they really telling me? Not just, oh yeah, I've dealt with this class of company before. I know the mid-market. It cracks me up that companies still have mid-market teams.
Right.
Think about that. What makes a mid-market?
Usually you suck. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, maybe we do need to schedule a second podcast, but
Yeah.
like what makes a mid-market? See, the beginner's mind would go, oh yeah, but when I was a Salesforce, and by the way, I wasn't. I'm just saying, fill in the blank, big company. Oh, we had a mid-market, we had a government, we had a, and well, that's how we did it. Well, but if those organizations have changed the way that they're buying, if the individuals working in those organizations making buying decisions are digital first, they don't think of themselves as mid-market companies, and therefore they behave in this mid-market way. Therefore, like to them, they'd be like, what? I want to buy your product. I want to learn about your product. Help me do that. So challenge assumptions. And then I really like the, embrace not knowing, because this is where AI becomes our jetpack. And so one of the things that I have found in my journey to infuse my professional life, with AI, and have leaned heavily into it, is to really like embrace the fact that I do know a lot of things about certain parts of the markets that I work in, and even some of the technologies, et cetera. I don't know everything, but I say, hey, I have a pretty good knowledge of it. But to embrace it as if I don't, and you type a prompt into Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude,
Yep.
Grok, whichever LLM of your choice, and you say, explain to me as if I'm a fifth grader, ...
Yeah. But
And
ever since that TV show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? I got to go lower
yeah,
because there's so much stuff I don't know. Yeah.
Well, but and so it's also in embracing the not knowing, even when you literally don't know or have
Right.
very limited knowledge, to say, you know what, now I literally have the world's greatest mind at my fingertips. And so, AI is the ultimate enabler, of the beginner's mind at scale, because it does provide, objective real-time data that is very, very helpful. Now, yes, we have to fact check it. Yes, it hallucinates. In other words, there's probably someone listening that's going, okay, but I tried it, and out of 6 attempts, like 4 were okay, and 2 were nonsense. Like, oh, all right. That's part of just being a good steward of the technology, right?
Go ask
And the
6
tool.
friends. You'll get the same ratio.
Yeah. It'll be worse, right?
It's like 2 were so absurd because they knew nothing about it, but still
Yeah.
wanted to weigh in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating, Joe, because there's a guy named Chris Walker that coined this idea of dark social. And Chris runs a marketing agency, very well known, really blown up on LinkedIn, helping B2B companies. And what he observed like 5 years ago was that there was this invisible channel that was quickly emerging. And the invisible channel was colleagues who, who would join together, maybe their CTOs or their CIOs or their, engineers working in a particular industry or focused on a particular, aspect of engineering, or their marketing leaders or their, whoever. And so then, it's Mark and Joe who are in a marketing and sales group, that might be run on LinkedIn. It might be on some private community. It could be on a Facebook community, on a Discord server. Where it is doesn't matter. But, so I'm considering buying a piece of technology, and I post, hey, I'm looking for a tool for this and that and the other. I'm looking at this. Anybody have ideas? And Joe responds, hey, bud, that's interesting. 6 months ago, my company went through a migration. Here was our consideration. These were the companies. And so there was this idea that there was this emerging like hidden channel where now all of a sudden Mark is exposed. In this example, I'm exposed to maybe a company, a solution that I didn't even know about. until, it's not, in other words, it's not because that company that Joe said, oh, hey, we actually evaluated, we went through this process and here's who we end up buying. And this is why, and it's hidden, right? There's
Right.
no attribution to it. It's because it's colleagues, talking.
Right.
Well,
You can't track it back to a marketing effort for the second person. Might have been to the first person, right? Could have been to me where I was like, well, I saw an ad or I did this, right? And now you're getting this, gestation of an idea that came to you. Wow.
That's right. Yeah. And so in a, hang with me with this example, because how is AI that much different? Like if I'm doing research now and I'm initiating, which I am, by the way, almost anything I want to learn, I want to explore, I start in one or all of the major LLMs. Right. And I pay to be a pro, at the pro user, or for Grok, I think they call it the heavy user, so that I can unlock, the better models and higher limits, et cetera. But if I'm starting there and I'm communicating back and forth, then, isn't that like the epitome of the beginner's mind? Because I'm not assuming, oh, well, I know, and there's only these 3 companies I would ever consider, or,
And you start with ask, don't tell, right?
Yeah.
You go to it and you're seeking the information instead of saying, I already know everything. Tell me why it's this.
Tell me. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So let's try and get just a little bit practical, just to give some, a real example here. So I'm a marketer, and, the beautiful thing is that with AI and being infused with AI tools, marketers can become like superheroes, literally, and superheroes in almost any dimension that you want to look at. So could be that you're just able now, a single person can produce literally 10x the output and still go home at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and not be working till 10 or 12, so that could be one dimension, just sheer volume. It could be quality. It might be, okay, I'm still publishing, one tentpole article a week. I'm publishing a blog post. I have 3 or 4 LinkedIn pieces going out. So I'm not changing the volume. But now I'm able to produce just much, richer, much higher quality content. There can be other dimensions as well. Creativity. I mean, or it could be just that now, guess what? I can work across domains. So maybe my company sells into a lot of different markets, of which I'm not experienced in all of them, but all of a sudden I am with the tools. Right. So, here's a day in the life of an AI powered marketer, from a week of work to a morning of execution. And you look at kind of the traditional marketer, they're brainstorming blog ideas. Well, you might spend an hour and you may come up with a good idea. The problem with creativity is it'd be nice if it was literally a switch that you could push,
Right. Because it's creative, it's not schedulable.
That's exactly right. But yet, when your job is marketing and, you sit down, you say, hey, 9 o'clock on Mondays, I blocked out for an hour to, to kind of figure out, what blog posts I'm going to write this week and, or next week. And, so instead the AI powered marketer, with tools sits down and uses, Surfer SEO, Copy AI, or any of the LLMs. And look, I'm not promoting, anything referenced here is just to give, if somebody's like, gee, I wouldn't even know where to start, like start there. But in reality, just go do some Googling, go do some searching. There are so many tools. We'll look at, by the way, how it's really easy to get started and you don't have to get hung up over the tool selection, but let's get through this. So you grab a tool and literally in 60 seconds, you have output. Now, that doesn't mean that you copy and paste the output and then you go, okay, done. All right. Hey, I can take a coffee break and I've only worked 5 minutes. No, now I've got the time I may take that full hour to brainstorm these blog ideas, but now I'm doing it from just these rock solid ideas. Now I can say, oh, wow, that one, the third one, that really is good. Let me go do a little more research. Let me go do, and you hone it. And so this again is where, quality. You might use the tools to produce much higher quality. You might use the tools just to produce a whole lot more content. It depends on your strategy. It's not one is better than the other. It's your, what are you trying to do? You might say, well, another major part of a marketer's job, if they're running paid advertising, is ad copy. And even if you're not running paid advertising, there's copy that has to be written. To do that well takes a lot of time. We've all heard it gets attributed to Mark Twain. I don't really know if it's him, but he apologizes presumably for writing a long letter because he didn't have time to write a short one. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but it is true. It is absolutely true. When you see really, really, really long, blog posts or, oftentimes, not always, but, and I'm looking at myself here. So I'm looking in the mirror when I make this statement. Oftentimes it's because the writing isn't clearly thought through, and so, yeah, it's just a spew of 3,000 words, just kind of spewed out on the screen, but it's not, well thought through. It's hard to take those 3,000 words and turn them into 1,000, 1,100 really crystal clear, digestible, easy to read. And that is really hard, and that will take longer. And the tools can help you with that. There's, ad creative, there's, for ad copy anyway, create a P, LLM, and then just LLMs, because as I will give an example at the end, I'll show you how I created this whole presentation and what eventually, will turn into a blog post, probably some LinkedIn content, using Gemini. So I'll show you the prompt, show you everything, and make it super practical. Okay, let's look at the life of a AI powered seller. Day in the life. Reclaim your time, double your impact. So, I think the big thing, I won't go through all these because, we all know from a selling perspective, research is very critical. Depending on what you sell and your sales process, it might be incredibly specific, as to you have a process or maybe a form. There may be, within Salesforce specific fields or HubSpot that you fill out. But somebody has to go get this information, and it takes time to do it. Even with all the tools at our fingertips, but now you can, with the right prompts and with some of the tools like Clay, Cirrus Insight, and again, LLM, and you can get research so that when you call up that major account and you talk to that person that you have the meeting with, they're blown away, at what
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. So, taking notes, one of the things that I have done, I did recently is, I record, I think all of us now, turn on the note-taking feature when we're on calls. And, I'm really happy that very, 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 very rarely do I get someone who says, can we turn off your recorder? Now we're all so used to it. And, obviously there's certain industries and certain conversations where, either legally or, you probably shouldn't have your note taker running.
Ethically. Oh, wait. Oops. No.
Yeah, but I realized that I had about 1,000 hours of notes that were of calls that were recorded. And so I built a RAG database, and which is basically a custom GPT, if you just, for those who aren't familiar. And I am able to query it. Now, here's the beautiful thing. It's incredible. You want to talk about knowing how Mark communicates, talks, the words I use. What's better than going back and having an LLM index all your calls?
Right.
And so now I have a database that is being populated, and every time there's a new recording, it automatically gets indexed. It's in the rag database, and I can query it, and it is just super, super, super helpful. This is rocket fuel for a seller. There's tools out there to do this. There's plenty of tools, but you can do it yourself. So
No, that's fantastic because you're going to be able to get coached, right?
yeah,
And it
yeah,
doesn't have a cognitive bias to look for certain things or to overlook something. Where
ex-
if I look at it, I go, that's just how I talk. So,
yeah,
ignore that part and keep
yeah,
going. And you go, well, that actually cost you 10 deals based off of the
yeah,
last 100 phone calls,
yeah.
right? Wouldn't you rather close 10% more?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know Gong is a product that I think a lot of enterprise sales teams now have brought in, and I'm not associated with Gong, never worked with them. I in fact, I've looked. Almost brought it in a couple times to companies. Actually, never did mostly because just kind of weren't big enough, and but the idea of being able to both as a sales manager, but even just as an individual contributor, I always felt like those kinds of tools, if my company isn't going to bring it in, I'd want to find a way to bring it in for me, to give me that distinct one-up advantage, because it is incredible how well LLMs take unstructured data and make sense of it. So let's, I'll kind of skip through this slide and just go to this next one. What I did was I put together a hypothetical company, but this data here is real world data that comes out of survey across the board from Forrester and Gartner, and there's it's drawn from a number of different sources. But the point is that when you move quickly, you're in an execution model, you use AI, even with just some of the most basic applications that, we kind of went through, it absolutely leads to an 18% reduction in sales cycle time. So, as we all know, time is what kills deals,
Yep.
meaning that the longer, the worse. You
Right.
don't want to go longer. You want to go shorter. So if I can shorten a sales cycle by nearly 20%, oh, wow, where do I sign up? And, how much of my paycheck do you need me to give you? It's
Right.
like, that is a huge deal. Pipeline growth, that's a given. Who doesn't want and need a better pipeline, and then increasing win rate. And this is exactly a result of applying tools. And so the question, and we'll wrap up here, and then I'll do a quick show and tell, just to let people kind of see, like, okay, like if I this afternoon wanted to start dabbling, what could I do? So the question then is, okay, hopefully nobody's watching this or listening who's saying, oh, I'm not sure if I agree with all this. By definition, if you've listened, if you've hung in there this long, you agree. But the question that I get asked a lot, and I had to get over when I first started my, AI journey, was, where do you start? Like, on one hand, the examples that you can see online and all the YouTube videos, the LinkedIn, demos that are so cool, some of them really are pretty simple. And, you watch it and you go, well, shoot, that's easy. Like, I can do that. But there's always, we're changing the way we're working, right? So where do you start? So I found that, first of all, start small, get some fast wins, some quick wins, and build momentum. So the easiest thing to do is, what I like to call a friction audit. And really the friction audit is just find one thing. You can find two or three, but to start, you just need one, because you're only gonna apply AI to this one thing. Don't try and do too much. Just do one. What is it that you have to do every day as part of your job that either you just hate? I mean, it's that thing. It's like, eating the frog, like,
Right.
what is it? Based on our personalities, some people, they may love prospect research, and frankly, they may love it too much. Because they may hate the the calling part of it,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
so they've got this amazing prospect research document. And it's like, but Mark, did you actually pick up the phone? No, but I'm getting a little more information.
Right. But when I'm ready, it's going
When
to
I'm
be a slam
when I'm
dunk.
ready,
Yeah.
I'm going to have everything, right? And there's someone else who may be like, oh, that's like, nails on the chalkboard. Like, oh, I just want to get on the phone to the customer, Well, probably both extremes are probably not, healthy or not right. So the point is, find something where there's friction, or it doesn't have to be that you hate doing it. By the way, it could be you're just like, you know what? I spend 2 hours a day, if I'm honest, just basically mindless copy and paste, and like, isn't there a better way to do this? And the answer is there probably is. Then you go do a 1 week, like a tool sprint. So go find one free. And by the way, do not go sign up for some because somebody has a teaser deal at $19 a month. And if you pay them, whatever, you can get it for a year. And don't, literally use the free. Almost all the tools give you enough free usage of the tool that you will know very quickly, if this is going to work or if maybe there's something else that you need. Go find a tool and figure out how to use that tool to do that one thing. Don't worry about the fact that that tool can probably do many, many other things. Don't boil the ocean. And that's where I think it's easy to get tripped up in the AI journey, because believe me, once you've cracked the door open a little bit, I mean, the demos you're going to see will blow your mind, because of course demos always do, right?
Right. Exactly.
They'll blow your mind and you'll be legitimately excited. You'll see so many opportunities to be more effective, to be more efficient. And it'll just be natural. Be like, oh my gosh, I need to now go do research in this area and this area. And and then it's like, no. Set all that aside, hold yourself back. Just figure out how to apply that tool. And if you try one, it doesn't quite work right, or maybe the user interface isn't that great, go find another one. There's a lot of tools, and then just execute. Just begin to use it and refine the process until you go, wow, maybe I didn't eliminate totally that 2 hours a day, but I'm finding now I'm only spending 30 minutes a day. That's amazing. Right. Yeah. And then you repeat this. Then there's a third, a way that you can kind of expand this. And this will really just, this is like when it becomes magic, is the next time you're in a meeting. And there's always, in a lot of the meetings I'm in, there's some, a decision that has to be made, some research that needs to be done, some exploration. Can somebody go, look into this, look into that, do some more research here? And usually somebody would get the action item, right? Hey, right. Joe, would you mind for next week's meeting coming back, telling us what you found on X, Y, and Z? And Joe goes, yeah, no problem. That won't take me too long. I know what to do. And Joe goes and does it, right? Well, now you're on the call. Don't assign it out, or don't be the person that takes it. Go on the call into ChatGPT and say, I'm trying to understand X, Y, and Z. Please tell me what my option, just type it out and see what you get. And then the call goes on and you say, hey, team, I just did a quick, here's what I found. And people go, wow, that's amazing. That's exactly what we needed to know. Now
we can move forward instead of rescheduling for the next meeting.
Yeah. Correct. And this is where these little small incremental, which the problem with this stuff is that there's probably somebody who's listened this far in and is like, okay, this guy talks pretty well. He knows what he's talking about, but he's not
And good
saying
looking. Don't
he's
forget
not
that
saying
part.
anything that almost everybody knows. And you know what? It's because a lot of people know what I've just gone through and they're not doing it. And the
Execution.
teams that do it are winning.
Yep.
And so just a little, just execute, be faster, right on the call, get to an answer. Maybe it's not the perfect answer. Maybe it's still, hey, why don't you go refine that? Hey, Mark, that's really great. Why don't you go do some more checking, maybe make a few phone calls, talk to some customers. Let's make sure it's right. But it sounds like that's what we need to do. And then I come back, I go, yep, I talked to these customers. We're moving faster. We're moving faster. So my encouragement, and this, just wraps up my, my training on the Sales Genius, podcast is, my encouragement is that in today's, business world, wherever you are, whether, B2B, small, medium enterprise, mid-market, however you want to define it, wherever you are, whatever industry, speed and execution trumps really almost everything, in almost every case.
Yeah.
And so that's my encouragement. Do you want to take a look at Gemini? Look at
I want everybody, because again, everybody's still hanging out, right? The answer is going to be, dude, tell me what the heck I can do right now.
Yeah.
Right. Because everybody, again, I do believe, Mark, a lot of execution comes from lack of execution comes from overthinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's let me sit back and tell you why. I mean, I talked to somebody today who I sent them everything they could possibly need to do something. And then they text me and they're like, okay, I'm trying, but this says, and I'm like, wait, what? And I was like, look, this is what I type into ChatGPT. And so I sent that over. I'm like, this is how you would phrase it. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's the answer I'm looking for. That was it. But they were so afraid of a prompt.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, no, ask it what prompt to use.
Well, have you, let's see, I know I stopped screen sharing. If you reshare my screen, okay. Because I'm in a different tab, I'm not seeing StreamYard.
Right.
But okay. All right. So, I have written a little bit on, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, go look at my profile, connect with me, you'll see that, like this whole subject of AI and small teams and the importance of execution is near and dear, to my heart. But when I was thinking, Joe invited me on, and so I thought, okay, how should I construct this? And I thought, what would be cool is to actually build this presentation using start in an LLM, start in Gemini. So here's what I did. I went into Gemini, and I happen to really like Gemini 2.5 Pro. I just find it's super effective. I like the way it writes. It's really, really, really good. So and yes, I use ChatGPT, and yes, I use Claude, and
you've used Grok, heavy user.
I don't use Grok as much for finding for writing. Anyway, I don't get quite as good of a result, but Gemini is amazing. This is my desert island LLM. It'd be Gemini. So here's what I typed. Okay. I typed, you are a senior go-to-market leader who will be giving a presentation to a group of B2B sales and marketing people about the subject, how AI execution beats experience. The goal of your talk is to show the group how AI tools give an unfair advantage to sales and marketing people. I want you to draft an outline for the talk that can be covered in 25 minutes. Here are a few points to cover, though I want you to dig deep and uncover, okay, blah, blah, blah. I won't, but and by the way, I don't have any issue, Joe, maybe I should copy these and you could put them in the show notes or something.
Absolutely. Yep.
But and I include some points here, that I felt are kind of important. So there's point 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's some other final instructions here. Okay, now it came back and it had a plan. Gemini, they call it, like it's like a research plan. I edited it a little bit. Edit it, doesn't matter what. I didn't need to, by the way, like its plan would have been perfectly fine, but I wanted to play with it. So I edited. Okay. And then I hit start research, and this is what it produced. Now, this is a long document, longish actually, that is incredible, will now become, by and large, the blog post.
Yeah, done for you.
This will become the blog post. And I mean, it's incredibly, it's very well written. I always do some, some human, copy editing, if you want to think of it that way. So I, again, recommend that you never just copy and paste.
Right.
Even though the edits that I make are becoming fewer and fewer and fewer as the language models get better and better and better. But that's what makes the writing, that much more, human, you would say. Okay, so let me go back up here. Okay, so this was the presentation. It was long though. So then I said, I want you to expand on this outline where you feel it's needed and create a set of Google slides, complete with illustrations and graphics. And this is what it gave me. Slide 1, title slide, execution advantage. And guess what? There's a graphic. Speaker notes. There's the key points. Look at this. Now, somebody still had to take this and, and make it look pretty. And, I have designers, obviously, being a marketer. So, but, one of my designers, it took him, I don't know, maybe spent an hour on it, but, it didn't take too long, kind of throw it in there. But even if you don't have a designer, you could very easily, translate that. Okay, now check this out. Okay, check this out. Okay, so I asked it to complete a interactive web application that is like a PDF document. And look at this. Now this one, it included an example from HubSpot. Because there were a couple examples in the document. You'll notice in my presentation, I didn't use, an actual, the HubSpot example, but isn't this cool?
That's amazing.
I love
the way it broke it out too.
Yeah, exactly. And all of this was done, like if I think about, I probably had, not counting the design time. And then after the designer returned it, I made edits to the PowerPoint that I showed you. I probably spent 30 minutes making some edits to the PowerPoint. The designer, maybe he spent an hour. My total process for all this Gemini work was 45 minutes, maybe. So in other words, I put together what you saw. Hopefully, hopefully it's like, wow, that's a pretty decent looking presentation. All the points, the graphics, everything looks good, right? And how long would that have taken if you were just sat down with a blank slide, the very first slide, and you had to just start like, okay, I know what I want to say.
After the writer's block hit, right? And after 3 failed ideas, right? Because one thing I've learned over the time is that it is easier to say, I can tweak something that's already been put together than I can create from scratch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
100%.
what it is. One other thing I was going to throw at you too. You have 1,000 hours of your sales calls and things like that.
Yeah.
That one, you could now take this document that you have made and throw it into that and said, rewrite it in my voice.
Yep. 100.
And now it's like, I know Mark. I got Mark down, right? Let me use his
100%.
words. Let me do this with the way his tone inflection. So it helps with blog posts and things.
So
talks like
you started, Joe, by asking me, what's the one thing?
That's the one thing.
And the one thing is that execution trumps everything, but execution with AI is magic. Execution without AI is going to be a stinking whole lot of work. Still worth doing. Execution's execution, right? But execution with AI is how, what I found, you can 10x volume and 10x quality literally at the same time. And I'll give you an example. There's a major trend for marketing teams to be, sadly shrinking. And it gets, sometimes it's kind of wrongly attributed to, well, it's cost saving measures. I'm finding more and more that it isn't really cost saving measures. It's just that I have 30 people, 20 people, and they're not even doing a good job. I mean, and so CEOs are just asking the very real business question, why do I have this many people who are not producing impact on the business? Now, I don't mean that they're not working hard. I'm not suggesting marketing teams aren't all working hard. Marketing is one of the hardest working, departments, I would argue, in almost all of the company. But when you look at the impact on the business, it's somewhat minimal. And yet there are, there's companies, there's a company that, that I lead marketing for that, there's three of us and a very small team behind. And we just came back from a major trade show, and that trade show, we had as many people coming up wanting to talk about the product as wanting to come up and say, what did you guys do? Your presence is huge. And you have a small team. How did you pull this off? And I'm telling you, throughout, the entire team, all of three people, everything starts in AI. Everything. I mean, everything starts there, and it's how we can be effective. So
absolutely, I love it. This is fantastic. What's been scrolling across the bottom of the screen, you guys have all been staring at Mark and the slides. You missed it. Growthstage.marketing is how you can find him. You can also go find him on LinkedIn like I did, right? And go out there and connect with him, reach out to him. I would say go to Growth Stage Marketing. I've already downloaded several of your mini books.
That's right. I have a lot of free resources up there.
Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, I like this topic. Ooh, I like this topic. Let me get that. Yeah. So I would recommend you get out there, find him, connect with him. Everything he gave you today was a way to print some money. And again, the key is going to be, what do you do with it from here? And we'll go right back to the rule number one, which is execute. Okay. So I don't care. Go copy the link from the YouTube video, put it in, and develop an action plan with AI, right? And say, what's the steps I got to take from Mark's presentation? You can do all of these things, but just do it. Do something.
Execute.
Right? Execute as you go on. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate your time, the effort you put in, even if it was only 45 minutes. I see how you are. But yeah.
Oh, it was longer than that, because remember, I had to edit the presentation. I had to then
you had to edit the research plan and then come back. Yes, fantastic.
And by the way, and actually, you know what? It's a very interesting point that you're making here. The criticism of AI, right? And so we could end with this, right? The criticism is, but I had it write a blog post and it wasn't anything like what I could have written. meaning, it was too superficial or maybe it got information wrong, etc. Well, first of all, almost always I can look at a prompt and go, well, yeah, because,
what you wrote.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it actually did what you wrote, you didn't ask it. But it's that knowledge and experience, then be able to read and then say, okay, yeah, that's not quite how my audience would talk. And yeah, that's, no, I'd like to use a different example. That's again, where people can look at, what I write, and of which all of it now, the secret's out, originates, at least starts, or somehow passes through a large language model, but they can look at it and then go, wow, I loved this white paper. I love that. That's amazing. To them, it's Mark Donnigan wrote it, right? Why? Because it's being filtered through the experience of Mark Donnigan. So the fact that it started as output from ChatGPT or from Gemini now more than anything is irrelevant, because it passed through my experience. And so we're not taking ourselves out. And in fact, don't fall into the trap of taking yourself out, because A, that's lazy, but B, that's how then you lose your experience. It's your experience that makes it real.
So. Agreed. Again, thank you so much. Wealth of information and a way to go print some money. And I suggest everybody execute and start printing some money. So thanks so much, Mark. I'll go ahead and say goodbye to everybody. And everybody else, now that you have this, go execute on what I tell you every time when I end. Go sell something. Fantastic. Thanks.
Let's talk about sales, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the challenges that may be. Let's talk about sales. A little bit.